We all understand the type of climate that we're dealing with. We're dealing with multiple offer situations.
I'd love to know sort of what's your why? What makes you tick? Why are you so successful?
Have a dialogue with your lawyer. Have a dialogue with your agent.
Both sort of passionate about sort of what we do.
Again, vet your agent to make sure that they're experienced and they're local. I like that idea.
No excuse to miss it on Saturdays from 8 to 9.
That's right.
WBZ.
And now, the show that gives you the latest and most relevant housing market news. Real Estate Radio Boston with financial expert Rick Scherer and legal professional Ali Alavi.
Linda, you've got a phenomenal listing that just hit MLS. You actually have an open house tomorrow. So let's talk about the property. Please give us the address and the sales price at the end as well.
Sure. So this home in this neighborhood, it's a very highly sought after neighborhood in Medway. It's in Broadacres Estates. It's a beautiful colonial. It's 18 Broadacres Farm Road. It's huge. It's location. It has a beautiful expanded backyard with a screened-in porch for the cool fall nights we were talking about. It's all lit up. They have a giant fire pit that's all landscaped professionally. There's 9 rooms. There's a 5th bedroom for first floor for visitors or in-laws. It has
in-laws. Don't pitch that. It's not my house.
a giant fully finished basement that could be. I mean, there's 3 different amounts of space in there. That could be a workshop. In one area, there's a huge playroom, family room downstairs, and then there's an office space as well. And they have 3 full bedrooms. I mean, it's gorgeous. So this house won't last.
What's it being listed for?
It's going to be listed for $684,900, which is a very competitive price in this area.
And what's the address?
It's 18 Broadacres Farm Road.
What defines a small association?
Well, I tend to view it as anything less than 15. But it's kind of one of those things that you know it when you see it, and I won't go any further with that comment. But clearly a duplex, clearly a triplex, clearly a fourplex. And then you start moving up. Does it become a small? Does it become a medium? But my break point is 15.
Okay. So what would you say are some of the challenges that small associations are faced with, and what is the value that you bring to the table?
Well, I think that in small associations, one of the problems that you have is that disputes become very personal. And that when 2 people or 3 people cannot agree, and especially when 2 people gang up on one person and they can't agree, this becomes very personal. And unless you have mechanisms to solve problems within the condominium documents, then you're going to run into trouble in a condominium. And let me just make an aside, by the way. Sometimes we talk about problems in condominiums. The fact of the matter is there are problems in single-family homes. There are problems in marriages. There are problems in everything. Right. But condominiums, being creatures of the law, sometimes need a lawyer's hand to help out in sorting out the problems amongst the different personalities in a condominium.
And let's face it, I mean, in small associations, you're really not talking, as a result of being small, the condo fees are very reasonable, they're very manageable, and therefore the amount of reserves that these associations have access to is very limited. And the disputes that you're talking about, Henry, I mean, well, first of all, tell me about the flavor of disputes that you've seen, but it also could translates to be very costly.
Well, one of the ones that we see most often, well, I shouldn't say most often because they all come up pretty regularly, but people tend to view it as a 2-family or a 3-family. And so if somebody wants to leave items, let's say, of personal property out in the front yard, but the other side doesn't want that, and they look to the documents, and the documents, because they generally are copied from older, larger associations, will say no items of personal property to be left on the common area. So now you have one person saying, well, this is my house. I want to leave my whatever it is outside. The other one saying, but the documents say this. So now you've got 2 people locked in combat over something relatively trivial, but notwithstanding that fact, extremely important to them. And as Henry says, it could be 3 units, and then you have the 2 against 1, and that leads to very hard feelings.
And back to your personal thing, I mean, you're passing them every morning as you're going to work, and you're coming home, and I mean, you're right next to these people.
There's no buffer.
No.
There's no buffer zone.
What
at
are
all.
some of these mechanisms that you both are alluding to in the condominium documents that one should be aware of as a buyer, or really as a buyer, in order to avoid that, or at least be able to contemplate for it?
Well, there are a couple of things that I want to say about this. First of all, in terms of mechanisms, a lot of condominium documents talk about arbitration. They talk about litigation. And the fact of the matter is this can be very, very expensive, especially if you only have one or two people sharing the cost.
I think you, Bob, out of anyone else that I know, probably has the best sort of hold on the pulse on the market. What are you seeing as far as sort of the changing of the market?
The real estate market.
The real estate market as you see it.
Well, currently, as I've mentioned on the show before, I was a real estate developer before and then got into the mortgage market, and this is how I started the mortgage company. Currently, in the last year, I've gotten back into the real estate market also because I've seen things that come up and opportunities come about. But what we've seen in the market, and it's been out in different articles, that the change of the living quarters has changed the way it was in the past. There's more single people now than married.
That's crazy. That's a great statistic.
So
And I think Massachusetts, and Brian, the engineer, brought this up during the break. That's Massachusetts leads in that, where there's more single people in Massachusetts than there are married people.
So it's a good time to be single, is what you're telling me. You can go out there and mingle and date.
Well, if you go out, if you do go out and about, and and you look into Boston and the surrounding communities, all the different restaurants and the bars are always filled with that clientele in the 25 to 35, 40 range that are out every night drinking or getting something to eat or just walking around. So you see it more
Mingling.
and more, and the expenses. So you'll tend to see more people having apartments together with roommates. But they don't need big quarters because they're out and about all the time. They don't need big kitchens. They don't need all that stuff. So the apartments and the condominiums are getting smaller with less living space to keep the cost down so that people can afford them.
Right, and you were talking about the waterfront district. I mean, that district is huge right now, and but it's expensive.
It's very expensive, But the other trend that we're starting to see is everybody is starting to find an area where they can work, live, and play at the same time. Less people are driving. They either use a car service or
Uber.
Or so less cars. So they don't mind being in the city. They want to be around where the action is. They can walk from neighborhood to neighborhood and get around. So it's changing a little bit as younger people are coming out of college and they want to be out and about in the city and maybe not in that 4,000 square foot house, 2-car garage and a big lawn to mow and things like that.
So you're seeing smaller units, and you're seeing more individuals that those types of units that appeals to them.
Absolutely.
And what about, obviously, I think there's also a trend towards these hotel condos where, how do you define that? I think it's
a condotel.
Condotel.
Yes.
And what are some of the challenges that banks are faced with in financing those types of projects?
Well, to be honest, the banks probably have an upper hand on that because they're generally dealing with a client because those people that are living there are probably more well-off financially. So they want to win their business as a client. Secondary market hasn't caught up as much on that type of product, but they're usually high net worth people that own those.
Let's talk about that for a second. When you say banks, you're really talking about the smaller portfolio local banks in and around the area, as opposed to not the big. So Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac don't like condotels. They probably originate 90% of the mortgages in the United States, something crazy like that. They don't like it.
Gotcha.
So when you want to get into a condotel, you're going to some of the the glitzier, glamier sort of portfolio banks in the city and
community banks that
will
want to win their business and earn their deposits and investment opportunities.
And what I love
people.
is the fact that if those are individuals that are looking for those type of opportunities, you would be able to channel those over to these type of portfolio lenders anyways.
Right.
Yes, we do have relationships with those type of banks.
You've got a joint venture. So there's a lot of people, and I talk to a lot of people in my own business that say, I want to get into rehabbing. I want to, but I don't know how to start. And you've got this phenomenal program. We're going to have a text campaign in just a couple minutes, but you guys have a phenomenal program where people can either have a deal and say, hey, I found this beautiful opportunity, but I don't know where to start. They can call you. Or they say, I don't have a deal, but I want to look for deals and I want to be educated.
Right.
They can call you with that as well.
Yeah, I'll tell you quickly about that. We started a joint venture program a few years ago where if folks found a deal and wanted to partner up on it, we would work with them and coach them through the process. And, we had some good success with that, met a lot of great people, but we found even more of a demand for people who do not have a deal but want to get in the real estate market. Mm-hmm. So we started what's called the Fast Track Joint Venture Program. And where that is we will provide the partner the deal to work on. Wow. Let them quarterback it, coach them through the whole process from soup to nuts. There's also a big educational piece on that. We bring them in the office a couple times a month, and we have a lot of literature to go over with them, show them how to find deals, how to estimate, just a lot of one-on-one time. And when they're done with this, they also get a good percentage of the profits on the deal that we source to them.
All right, so let me get this straight. This Fast Track Joint Venture allows me to partner up with you, and then you would evaluate a project, tell me how to evaluate a project, run through the entire rehabilitation process, and then I would get to share in the profits.
Yes, absolutely. We've already signed up a good deal of people for this. It's already off the ground.
Chris, that sounds almost too good to be true.
It is.
That's incredible. Is there a cost associated with participating in this Fast Track?
There is a cost associated with it.
Okay, but that cost seems to me that it's absolutely justified based on the fact that I'm actually partaking in the profits at the exit.
It is less than a lot of the other programs out there. I know that to be true, and it's the only one that I'm aware of where you actually get involved in a project that you do not have to find yourself. So it gets you started in investing in real estate.
And that's the tricky part. I mean, that's sort of, what your hurdle has been is how do I find the good deals so you're bringing a good deal to them that you've already analyzed, it's a good deal, and you're joint, venturing with them. And then obviously, in the future, as they sort of get this knowledge, they can go off and do it themselves. They can continue to partner with you. It sort of allows people to get going.
Yeah, we've like I said, we've already been working with some folks. Some are on, their second deal already. It works.